create legislation for the state of Michigan so that there is funding to support the services for children with autism. If you asked anybody, is there one specific person that you would point to who is more responsible for the autism insurance than anybody else in the state of Michigan? Unanimously, people would say Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley. So it is with his leadership and his assistance that children are going to start getting the services that they need. And you've heard enough about his work already. I'm just going to turn the mic over to Lieutenant Governor Calley.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the invite to be back with you back here in the city of Portage. Mayor, thanks for hosting such an important happening, such an important development in autism services. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out, it was mentioned in the very beginning opening remarks that that one of our oldest friends, Don Gilmer, was here. A lot of people don't know this. He's actually the oldest surviving former legislator in the state. That's not actually true. I mean, I'm sure there's at least one older. Yes, okay. The speakers that came before were all doctors. I'm not a doctor. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But these are the type of experts that this community has now available as a resource. It's a difference. It's a big advantage for people, for families struggling with autism, and really an asset now for the entire state of Michigan, particularly with the university and the work that has happened there over the course of the last generation. And so I'm going to go ahead and set a goal for this community and set a goal for Western that I think is very achievable and really ultimately a responsibility to build on the great work that has been done. So Michigan in the past has been labeled as one of the 10 worst places to live if you have autism. That's where we have been. Right, one of the worst places in the developed world to live if you have autism. That's Michigan. And moving forward, we have the opportunity, because of the most comprehensive approach in our nation toward making the economics around providing services for autism work, we have the opportunity to be one of the best. But I don't want it to just be one of the best places to receive services if you have autism, but I think that with the assets that you have right here in this community, and this building being a big start of it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it in just a moment, the opportunity to be the center of the research, treatment, the drive to a cure, the drive to productive life, that the center of the world could be right here, could be this region. That you have the framework, you have the infrastructure, you have the education system. If you have treatment facilities that have good observation and research partnerships involved with it, as this one does, you have the opportunity to take it to the next level, to the next step. And so what I'd like to see out of this region, and it wasn't a particularly competitive process when Wayne was put on the commission. Because what you do here already is distinguished across the entire nation. It was said, you know, I don't know, maybe half in joke as this is the best. They have the best autism education system at Western, but they really do. Right? Western is the #1 BCBA school in the nation. A lot of people don't realize this. We don't realize it because in many years, 100%, literally 100% of the graduates go elsewhere for work. But that won't be the future here anymore. And we share just a couple of personal observations. It had been mentioned before that we have, that my daughter and I, or my wife and I have a daughter with autism. She's 5 now. And we've struggled through the same sorts of things that everybody else living in Michigan with a person in their family with autism have struggled through. Except for I have every advantage in life. I know more people than the average person, more connections, more statewide, more ability to find, even in the most difficult of circumstances, services for my daughter. Less than 10% of kids with autism in Michigan prior to now receive the type of services that they need to have any kind of shot at a productive future. Less than 10%. And the number that get everything that they need is even a lot smaller than that. You shouldn't have to be the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Michigan in order to find the type of resources that you need for your family. And so, when I see this sort of thing happen, when I see the landscape across our state changing, it gives me hope, but more important, because my daughter actually had access to behavioral therapy before all this started. It gives us that other 90% of families in Michigan living with autism hope that there is something, there is a future, there's an opportunity, a shot at independence. We spent the better part of 2 years between the denial phase to the phase of, or to getting the diagnosis to finding therapy. 2 years of prime brain development time in my daughter's life trying to find what she needed. But I consider there to be two general aspects of my life, kind of a before and after. Okay, so there's before and after. Think about the times, important aspects of your life where everything changed. It was one way up to this point and then this way after that. Maybe that's when you got married, or maybe that's when you started a career, or maybe that's your kids or whatever. For me, the before and the after very clearly is life before we found behavioral therapy and life after we found behavioral therapy for my daughter. It's that bad. And yet most do without any. And unfortunately, there are many service treatment providers and those charged with caring for people with autism that don't even know that they don't know. And that's the importance of the council that you heard about. Governor created just recently a council populated by 12 people that have the tool, the knowledge, and the experience to make a big difference. But the Kalamazoo region has to be a leader. It has to be a leader. The exciting thing about what happened in this building behind me is that you have residential therapy, residential services, which, by the way, are not just rare in Michigan. This is the only one in Michigan, be the only one in Michigan. But it's actually quite rare around the nation. This is very substantial. This is important. But also with outpatient services and the transition services, it's all set up for research and education. And not just education of and there'll be education of the kids that are in here, but I'm talking about education, training people to be world-class providers of services for people with autism. That this building is set up so that the research and the education partnerships can be a part of the therapy. And when you put that triangle together, that's when really important things happen. That's when breakthroughs happen, when progress happens. And so that's the opportunity in front of us. I'd be remiss if I didn't point one more thing out before I finish, and that is that you do have a strong heritage of leadership, political leadership in this area. And it shows by the look of Kalamazoo and the whole region, right? So, and I was just going Southwest Michigan, right? Southwest Michigan has a different look and a different feel from a lot of other parts in the state. On a per capita basis, loss of manufacturing jobs, every bit as bad here as it's been anywhere else. But it doesn't look like a lot of other places that have been hit that hard. And that's because you have strong community leadership, strong political leadership, strong communities that have made the best of really tough situation and built on assets that you have instead of longing for assets that left. And what a difference that has made. And I look at just this, the autism insurance, it might seem like it shouldn't have been so hard to you, like it should have, why is it so controversial? Why is it so difficult to change the insurance code to simply recognize that the things that will be happening in this building are not experimental and they're worth doing? And they can't be locked out on such an extraordinary basis like they were before. But when you have a world that is built around a status quo, and interest groups that really have a vested interest in maintaining that status quo, what you find is that it's no more powerful than with the insurance code. So you had a very powerful alliance of business and labor that didn't want this change to happen. And others that said, well, if you're going to open it up, let's change a bunch of other things too. And so there were all these different forces conspiring against it happening, but it took a lot of people coming together to make it happen. Now, I actually didn't get a vote on it. The Lieutenant Governor does not get to vote on the legislation, although the Governor happened to be nice enough to go to Afghanistan when the legislation hit his desk, and so I got to sign it. But Representative Sean McCann, Representative Margaret O'Brien, and Senator Tanya Shoemaker all supported it. And that was not an easy lift. There were a lot of folks on both of their sides that were trying to twist their arms to walk away from this important change. And I haven't gone through and looked at the voting records of Sean McCann and Margaret O'Brien, but I don't suspect that they're very similar in a lot of cases. So I appreciate the support and the way that the legislators in this region came together to make that happen. And I'll say a special thank you to Margaret O'Brien, who is on the committee that did the work in the House. Okay, so there's a particularly heavy lift. That committee had not handled an issue as big as an insurance change all year, and so it was a lot of work that was involved in it. It would not have happened without Margaret O'Brien's work and leadership on that committee. And so as we move forward today, the economics can work, quality control, and expansion of, in light of the expansion of services that we expect, are our main concerns. And so we need models to point to, we need leadership, we need places to take those first steps, that when other communities are looking to take their first step, and we can show them, look what's happened right here in Portage. Look what's happened in Southwest Michigan. Look at the way that connecting education, research, and service has propelled the opportunity and the results that you see. They're possible for these kids. And we'll have a stronger, better future because of it. The work that is done here is not very often. I think about it in my life in government, or the 10 years prior that I spent in the private sector. There aren't very many things I've ever worked on that will matter 50 years from now. Now, we've done some pretty big, important things over the last year in reforming Michigan government and how it works. And most of them will not have much of a fingerprint left 50 years from now. But the work that is being done here today, the work that will be done in these doors behind me, it will matter 50 years from now. It passes that test 100 years from now. That this is a critical need and something I hope this